to Unleash the Goats, where we unleash ourselves upon the Star Wars franchise with reckless abandon, and nobody quite knows what we'll say next. Least of all us. I'm Nat, she, her. Angela, say hi.
Hi, I'm Faye, / Angela, she, her.
Sugar, say hi.
Hi, I'm Sugar, she, her.
Welcome to this episode. We're talking about Finn today. I would like to start this episode by telling you guys who Finn is as a character.
Please do. Please tell me everything about Finn.
Yeah. Right off the top, spoilers for the sequel trilogy. I have seen one of those movies, and it was the first one, which I've heard is the best one.
It is.
So Finn is a stormtrooper, and people were mad because he's black, and they're shitty for that. He's a stormtrooper who something happens, and he's like, I'm gonna desert. And he does that, and he ends up with the little round, I think BB-8 is the name of the robot. And also, he puts on Poe's jacket, and he meets Rey, and they're besties. And then he comes back to Poe, who did not get killed off, and there's a lot of sexual tension between them. And I believe that Finn stays single the entire time, which is honestly wild. And that's his entire storyline.
Considering how hot John Boyega is, yeah, that is wild.
I mean, arguably, he does get an official kiss from Rose, so whether he's single within that context is debatable, but they don't end up in a full relationship. He doesn't end up in an official relationship after that, because people, I think, were, like, not super happy about that particular change.
Oh, you mean the ginormous wave of hate that the poor Rose actor got online for months on end that did not let up?
Kelly Marie Tran. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, you know, the people who liked Finn and Rey weren't happy with it either. So there's a number of reasons why I think that didn't work. We'll get to it, though. So I have seen all of the films. Faye has seen all of the films.
To my great distress.
To both of our great distress. We decided to let Nat not watch these for her own mental sanity. I did us all the favor of having rewatched it recently, because I have only seen each film, I think, about once, which was when they came out in theaters, and I went to go see each one in theaters when it came out, so it's obviously been quite a few years for me for some of them, and my memory was spotty. And I was relying a lot on Faye's memory of the films to tell me what the fuck had happened in them. So I have seen them in, what was it, like 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I think. And I just kind of powered through them, so I have relatively fresh memories. But it was not the funnest of times.
Oh, you didn't enjoy it?
Yeah, shockingly, the sequels have problems. And we decided we wanted to talk about the sequels, but that there's a couple of things in them specifically we wanted to sort of separate out. So this will be kind of the first in a series of times where we will talk about the sequels, and we're just going to focus on Finn for today. But we're, unlike what I think most people do, we're going to try and focus a little bit less on what we think went wrong, and try to focus a little bit more on what we might have wanted to see, or what we would do to try and make the storyline better to our personal tastes than what we ended up getting in canon. So we'll start off, I think, by trying to discuss Finn's story, what his actual storyline even is.
Yeah, because in the first one, they kind of set up, like, you have a note here about, like, his fear thing. In the first one, they have an arc that they set up that Finn is starting from a place of a lot of vulnerability, a lot of, not sheltered in a way, but really, like, he's been in a bubble most of his life, so he's discovering what the galaxy actually is, and he's afraid of a lot of what's happening all of the time, because he has no experience with anything outside of the First Order, and there's a lot of, like, a theme here of him learning to run towards what he wants instead of running away. And it was really interesting. Like, it was a cool arc. And they kind of set up that he's maybe Force sensitive because, like, he gets the lightsaber and he fights Kylo Ren. And, you know, there's, like, little hints that, like, well, potentially he's, like, a little bit of, like, a different kind of Force sensitive than Rey is. And then, you know, The Last Jedi happened, so...
Yeah, so I'd argue that, like, one of the things that I liked the most about Finn's arc in Force Awakens is that he's really got the central idea of selflessness versus selfishness, right? That, like, a lot of what he's doing because it benefits him. You know, he helps Poe escape because he wants to escape and he needs a pilot. Not necessarily, he claims, obviously, initially that it's because it's the right thing to do, but Poe figures out that that's not really the true motivation there. that, and he gets upset when everyone goes back to Jakku because, like, what he needs is to get as far away from the First Order as possible. He ultimately is just trying to run away from all of his problems, and it ends up being his connection to Rey that allows him to kind of turn back around and fight for something more than his own survival. And while his motivation for running is obviously very understandable and very, very sympathetic, like, it starts to show this arc of Finn becoming a hero. And it's great. It's really compelling. And yeah, then The Last Jedi happens and shit all kind of hit the fan. I think that was just a really interesting way to take his arc, especially because the other two main characters in there with Poe and Rey are very fearless characters in so many ways. They're very gung-ho, very, what word I'm looking for here, but they're pushing at their own boundaries quite a lot in a way that Finn just isn't. So it was interesting to kind of have that contrast in Finn.
And it worked really well for just the Rey and Finn dynamic, for like them to care about each other a lot, but have like kind of opposing mentalities. Because all Rey wants to do is go home and sit down and wait for a little while longer. Like, she loves the adventure, but she just wants to go home. And then Finn is over here like, I hate the adventure and I would like to run away and go like hide out somewhere else. But they both really like each other, so they want to spend time together. Like, they want to do these things together because they have found somebody who understands them and is on the same wavelength as them, but they want different things. And it's really, really interesting dynamic for them to set up and then, just throw away. And then
right.
But I really liked the dynamic initially. It's really cool.
Yeah, like, I think, like, they set up that, like, Rey is clinging to a home that doesn't exist. And Finn is he doesn't have a home to go back to. He's left what home was available to him. And so the two of them are kind of starting to figure out maybe that, like, they have to leave those pasts behind them and realize that home is with each other and kind of use that to push them into joining the rebellion. And it's just really sweet and very Star Wars, in a lot of ways. And I think that was a dynamic that I wish we'd gotten a little bit more of. And obviously they do get separated at the end of the film, but, Last Jedi could have gone anywhere. And it chose to keep them separated the whole film.
I mean, at least we get a hug from them at the end, which is more than I can say for Leia and Chewie. I will give it the tiniest of crumbs for the singular hug that I got.
At the end of Force Awakens?
No, at the end of The Last Jedi, Rey and Finn hug. It's very sweet. It's a lovely moment. It's the only good thing in that movie.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of, like, the 5 good things from that movie.
That's a lot of good things from that movie.
That's a lot of good things about the movie.
I would not have picked 5 as my number.
Okay. Well, one, it's this hyperspace jump all by itself. That shot, incredible.
Okay.
The opening scene with Poe being a dick to Hux, hilarious.
Also
the hug. Leia and Luke's scene together, that's a very sweet scene, even though I hate the whole astral projection thing. I do like that scene. It's very sweet. I lied. There was only 4.
I was like, kept us in suspense. It's fine. While we're on The Last Jedi, I do think that there is at least an arc for Finn in The Last Jedi. I don't think it was executed very well, but it does exist, and the basic idea that I picked up from it is that they are trying to take Finn from where he seems to be at the end of The Force Awakens, which is that he is mainly in the rebellion, still for personal reasons, but instead of helping himself, it's to help Rey. And so they're taking him from that to being in the rebellion because he believes in the cause. And that seems to be the arc that we're going on with Finn over the course of The Last Jedi. And, just moving him along that kind of selfishness to selflessness sort of arc. Again, I don't know that I like the way they chose to execute this. I think there is a lot of issues with that, but it does exist. It is there. In comparison, The Rise of Skywalker treats him sort of better, but I couldn't come up with an arc for him, y'all. Like, he's just kind of along for the ride in this movie. There. He's just kind of there because he got so fucked up in his arc in Last Jedi that I think, when Abrams came back in and was trying to stuff a lot into The Rise of Skywalker, that Finn ended up on the back burner. and his arc that was presumably supposed to be there kind of it landed on the cutting room floor. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, I do still, like, I blame The Last Jedi for a lot of this. Like, the problem is within the Rise of Skywalker film, but I feel like Rise of Skywalker suffers because The Last Jedi set it up for failure, and that's unfortunate. So I'm going to blame The Last Jedi for why everything in here sucks. There's going to be a lot of people who don't agree with me on that.
No, but you're correct, though, because the reason that there are so many issues in The Rise of Skywalker for his arc is because they don't have time in The Rise of Skywalker to write an entire arc based on nothing that they got from The Last Jedi and do everything else in that movie. They just don't have time, and so Finn ends up getting cut, which sucks because he's so great. But, like, because The Last Jedi made him so into such a side character, they made him so inconsequential in The Last Jedi that he is the easiest one to cut in The Rise of Skywalker. His storyline's the easiest one to cut because he doesn't matter to the story anymore. Like, in the first movie, he has, like, an interesting dynamic with Kylo, where Kylo and him have, like, a weird back and forth of, like, Finn is the one being accepted by his family, and he's the one who's, like, being accepted by the Force. The lightsaber lets him use it. Like, he's the one rejecting all these teachings that were forced on him that Kylo has, like, actively sought out and, like, found and accepted for himself. Like, they have a cool dynamic going on, and The Last Jedi is like, no, they don't care anything about each other. And, like, Finn doesn't even mention Kylo Ren's name, I'm pretty sure, in The Last Jedi. And so when it comes to The Rise of Skywalker, when we have anything to do with Kylo, all we care about is him and Rey, because that's all The Last Jedi cared about. And so Finn is over here, like, dealing with Resistance, but Poe is a bigger part of the Resistance because he's been there for longer and has more of an arc there. So it just, he ends up getting caught in the middle because he was supposed to be a bigger part of, like, the Kylo main plot line, and he's not.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of the things I liked the most in Force Awakens as well was this really interesting parallel between Kylo and Finn. That was one of the things I definitely caught within that film, and it absolutely just gets dropped. Like, they really, really set up this... Like, it's not even a dynamic between the two of them, because they don't interact much at all. But just this, like, kind of back and forth that they have, you know, in the editing, where you can tell that they're setting up that these two are narrative foils to each other in a way that Rey and Kylo just kind of aren't. And that, like, Kylo is the one who was raised in light, right? That he had the perfect parents. He was raised with the Jedi, with Luke. He should have had everything handed to him on a silver spoon, and yet he falls into darkness. Whereas Finn is raised in darkness, and ultimately, when faced with the option of whether to kill innocent people or not, just can't do it. And this is what, you know, propels him into leaving. He's never had to be asked to kill someone else before. And that kind of gets to him in a way that it doesn't prior to this. And so he starts this journey towards becoming a hero, despite the fact that he's never had anything handed to him in that way. And it's just such an interesting dynamic to have them on these kind of opposing tracks. And the way that sets up this theme that Star Wars has always had of choice, you know, that they both have the choice to be better and do better, and that Kylo's not going to, but that Finn is.
I especially like the way that it sets up as Rey is not caring about either of them that much. Like, she cares about Finn, but, like, her story is separate from both of them in a way. She is the it girl. She is the main character. Everyone's obsessed with her, but she is off doing her own thing. And I love that for her. And I wish that we got more of Finn being, like, the push and pull with Kylo and having that, like, dynamic and, like, fun things going on while Rey's over here, like, setting up the Jedi and, like, having a big important thing. Well, Finn deals with the Kylo thing. That's not her job. She's doing important things over here.
I think one of the things I liked about Force Awakens too is that Rey and Finn are kind of set up not as, like, Rey is the main character and Finn is her support in the way that you get in the other stuff where it's like Anakin is the main character, Luke is the main character, and everyone else is a support, even if they're a major support. But that Rey and Finn are sort of co-leads, right? That, like, the awakening is not one of them, it's both of them. The two of them together, they're really set up as, like, two halves of one person, you know, two parts of the same hero. And I think that's something that The Last Jedi did not get. And even though they're separated, obviously, at the end of The Force Awakens, and that's not something The Last Jedi did, you know, they were separated by the first film, that, like, that connection between them as these kind of binary halves, the binary stars just kind of like they're the same being almost in two bodies, is something that really does not get explored at all beyond The Force Awakens. And it's unfortunate that didn't happen, but I think that was something that I really wish had been more explored, which I think will move us into what we would have done. We can move away from the analysis, because we could talk about what went wrong all day, and people have.
They can, they have, we will.
Do we want to briefly mention the racism?
Oh, yes.
I feel like that's important.
That is important. So we will briefly mention and acknowledge that for a lot of reasons, obviously, Finn's character suffered from racism, as did the actor, obviously, but Faye mentioned earlier that, he gets sidelined quite heavily in The Last Jedi, which makes him the easiest to sort of put on the cutting room floor by Rise of Skywalker. But I think it is undeniable that as a darker-skinned black man, have also played a part in considering him easy to sideline in comparison to Rey, who is a white character, and Poe, who obviously is played by a Latin man, but who is, lighter skinned and definitely has passed as white characters before.
Yeah.
And I think that's undeniable.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I feel like The Rise of Skywalker is very much like the studio trying to please all of the fans. And unfortunately, there's a large portion of fans who really, really, really hated Finn. And so in order to please those fans, one of the things that they did was not give Finn a lot to do, because they didn't want more people being upset about Finn. And, first of all, cowards. Second of all, my poor baby Finn was, one of the best characters. And, then they just didn't do anything with him. It's so frustrating. The potential that is so wasted in the sequels is so frustrating. But it does give us the chance to write a beautiful fix-it for you all. You're welcome.
And I wanted you to talk about, too, because I think you put this in the notes, the violence towards Finn.
Oh! Yes, I do want to talk about that. Thank you so much for reminding me.
Yeah.
Okay. There is this really obnoxious thing in The Last Jedi where multiple times, both Poe and Finn, the only men of color in this movie, get slapped or get hit or get violence is done to them in some way by a woman, and it is played off as the woman is right to do this to them, and it's funny. Those are the two options that we have, because Poe gets slapped by Leia, I think multiple times.
Just the ones. She shoots him, though, later. Just
the once, yeah, and then he gets shot later. It's a stun gun.
Oh, yeah, he's not literally shot. He is stunned.
Oh my god, okay. Sorry.
All right, I was like, what?
You're like, what's the big deal?
Okay, yeah, she kills his ass. Sorry, Nat.
And then Finn gets lightning bolted / stunned by Rose, and it's seen as this powerful moment kind of thing, where she's the badass in this moment. But he hasn't done anything wrong. He's not a member of the Resistance in this scene. He has every right to leave if he wants to. And she's like, no, people can't desert. And I have been stopping people from deserting all day. I love Rose a lot. I love the actor. She's fantastic. It's not her fault. However, this is such a weird scene, and it's just played off as normal and fine, that she just blasted this dude. And he's going to have a lot of bruises and injuries, especially because he hits the wall with his back really hard. He just woke up from being in the back to tank for a very bad back injury. He gets a lightsaber on his back. It looks really bad. And he just gets blasted into a wall, and he's totally fine when he wakes up. And it's not a big deal. But, I hate it when violence against anyone is normalized like that. It's a big problem for me with, the Moffat era of Doctor Who, is, how often it's, fine that River and Amy slap the Doctor because, haha, it's funny. But, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Nobody should be slapping their friends. Even if you think they deserve it, don't do it. It's awful. And so, but especially because he's a black man, it's okay, right? That's how it's portrayed in the movie. Is it's fine. Just because he's he's tough. He can take it. No, he's 21. He's a baby. And no one should do that to anyone. If the roles were reversed in any single one of those scenes, if Poe was a woman getting slapped by a male general, if Finn was a woman running away and a male guy tased her against a wall, we would have a problem with those scenes. And we should have a problem with those scenes just in the reverse too. I understand that it's an empowerment thing for a while, that violence for women against men. And I understand that women being violent is kind of hot. I understand that. However, it shouldn't be like normalized as like the right thing to do. It's not the moral thing to do in these scenes. If women are going to be violent, let them also be evil.
Yeah, I think you could argue that, like, if Rose had tasered him and then everyone would have been like, mate, like, nobody told you to be doing this. What are you doing? Like, like, if it had been condemned a little bit more, I think there would have been a little bit more room for it. But like you say, it's always represented as, like, the right and heroic thing to do. Or, like, I think one of the other times Finn has violence done against him, I believe it's Phasma. And she is a villain. But, you know, I think it just represents a pattern, particularly within The Last Jedi. I don't think it really exists outside of that. Of violence being done as a joke or as a moment of empowerment, and particularly, like you said, from female characters to male characters. And it's incredibly unfortunate. This is a movie where a lot of the characters do just, like, do nasty things to each other. They are rude to each other. They are cruel to each other. They don't seem to like each other very much. You know, and that's just a pattern across the film, both emotionally and physically, and it's one of the reasons I don't like it very much, and that's kind of neither here nor there for this discussion, but it plays into this pattern that we see with Finn and Poe getting hurt in ways that are represented a little bit uncomfortably. And it's something that I think does get fixed a little bit within Rise of Skywalker, where this does not happen to Finn or Poe, where they get violence done towards them, but the disrespect shown to the characters does continue in other form in The Rise of Skywalker. And yeah, it's undeniable that a lot of this is happening from white female characters towards the only two men of color in the film. So I think we've hit the racism. It's clear that, like, there were a lot of problems with the writing and the treatment of the actor, that Finn was set up as a co-lead with Rey and Daisy Ridley. And that The Last Jedi absolutely obliterated that and disrespected his character to the point that The Rise of Skywalker really couldn't come back from that. So, with that in mind, here's what we might have done. So, our tier 1 that I put in was, how would we have followed up on things that were promised within The Force Awakens for the character, which, you know, I kind of defined as things that were pretty explicitly set up, that then got dropped. The problem I have found with this section for Finn is that I'm not sure anything was. That the Force-sensitive thing isn't explicit. He picks up a lightsaber, but it's not like we haven't seen non-Force-sensitive people use lightsabers. You know, he clearly has a strong bond with Rey, but at no point is it made explicitly romantic. You know, even the stuff about him becoming a rebel is kind of left like he could go other places. So I this section ended up like, unfortunately, Force Awakens didn't do a good enough job at making his arc explicit enough that you couldn't drop it. And so this left The Last Jedi open to kind of drop a lot of his shit. So we're going to skip down to tier 2, which is things that were implied by the narrative that didn't get follow through. I started with the Stormtrooper Rebellion.
Oh my god, the way we could have gotten such a good, beautiful arc. The visuals that we could have had. I dream about them sometimes.
Yeah, this is absolutely something I think The Last Jedi dropped the ball on. Especially because they have him go back through the First Order by the end of it, and nothing comes of it. So I think that that's something that I feel like the second film, whether it was, you know, we're fixing The Last Jedi or making our own movie out of it, I think we definitely should have gotten more movement forward on Finn's relationship to the Stormtroopers and the way his desertion has impacted them in the Empire. And I think there's so many really cool ways you could have explored that particular theme.
My favorite thing about this so far is watching Natalie's face when she gets surprised by a fact that she didn't know. She's like, oh, did that happen? It's really funny.
No, you're like, we've seen not Force-sensitive people use lightsabers, and I'm like, oh, we have? Who's we?
You have, because Grievous in the prequels is one of them.
That's fair. He's a robot. I don't count him.
Robots aren't people.
No, that's not what I said. I can't get into this. Anyway, yes, there should be a Stormtrooper Rebellion. That feels like a very logical next step
You would think, right?
There's a deleted scene in The Last Jedi where, like, some of the stormtroopers don't listen to Phasma anymore because they're kind of convinced by what Finn was telling them. And they just don't do anything with it. Like, they like, thought about it briefly. They put it up on the storyboard. And they're like, nah, never mind. Like, what are you doing? You have this opportunity to do a really cool thing with stormtroopers who are objectively, like, one of the most, like, fan popular things. Like, there's the 501st Legion in, like, a dozen different cities. People dress up as stormtroopers all the time. They could have done so much cool shit with them, and they were just like, no, what if we just did nothing with them?
It's also one of the things that makes Finn the most unique character in the entire trilogy, because Rey is, I would never say that she is a copy of Luke. Obviously, I think she is very clearly her own character, but the trajectory that her character is on is not dissimilar to Luke's or to other characters that have been explored in Star Wars before, of just this young child, who is, suddenly made aware that she has powers she didn't realize and starts to become, hero because of it.
Yeah, she's the magic orphan baby.
She's the magic orphan baby. And, there's similarities there to other characters we've seen before. And Poe is this rebel, hotshot rebel pilot, and, it's not like we haven't seen a hotshot pilot before. There are similarities between those two characters and things we've seen before, but Finn, as, like, a stormtrooper deserter, feels incredibly unique, and, like, he was the one that provided the opportunity to explore new things within Star Wars that hadn't been done before. And we didn't get it. So I think that would have been the place to really expand and really focus The Last Jedi on, quite honestly, more than Poe's leadership arc. Like, I love Poe, but Poe was a smaller character in The Force Awakens, and Finn was a co-lead, and the fact that Poe got more than Finn did is abominable, and I think we should have gotten the two of them together focusing on the Stormtrooper Rebellion.
No, I totally agree. And Finn himself, like, he has this place in the narrative that allows you to, like, look into the underbelly of what it looks like to be a person who works for the Empire. I mean, the First Order is basically the Empire, but to see what that looks like, we've only ever gotten, like, officers and high-ranking people. We don't really get the common man inside of these evil organizations, and we have this chance with Finn to get in there and, like, see what's going on. Like, who are these people who work for the Empire? Do they have a choice in it? Do they want to do it? Do they like it? Are they brainwashed? Like, what's happening with these people? And we just don't get it. Like, 5 million people of this type died on the Death Star, and we know nothing about what kind of person serves the Empire like that. Like, do they genuinely believe in the Empire? Or this is just a job for them? Like, there's so much material that they could mine here, and they just don't do anything. It's insane because they have so much to do. Like, there's so much that they could cover. They could go any direction that they want, and they just drove the car off a cliff instead. It's wild.
Especially because Finn is sanitation.
Yeah, well,
like,
in fairness, they do, like, retcon that a little bit in their novels, where they're like, oh, actually, he was on the officer track, and it was just, like, a punishment duty. Which is, like, fine. I never liked the sanitation thing, honestly.
I mean, I don't hate it, because, like you said, he is very young, so I could understand that, like, Finn maybe was someone who was that they do that, right? That, like, before they send them out to their first battle, that, like, someone's got to do the shit job. Like, someone has to, so you might as well make it the young cadets who are not yet ready to be sent out to battle.
Yeah.
Like, I get that. I think that actually kind of works, especially in the element of making him a little bit more naive in some ways, that, like, Rey and Finn have this really interesting dichotomy where, like, they're both naive and ignorant in one way, and then, like, really much more experienced in another. That, like, Rey has, she's a scavenger, right? That there's a lot of things she hasn't experienced about the world either, but she's so much more hopeful, than Finn is in some ways. And Finn, like, really understands the danger of the First Order in a way that she just doesn't, and, has that in his head, but he doesn't have the optimism that Rey does about the rebellion, or the resistance as it's considered in the sequels. Yeah, the Stormtrooper Rebellion, I think, would have been a really great thing to expand upon, because it's a great way to expand Finn's character into the cause, right? That, like, what they were doing in The Last Jedi by trying to kind of convince him, like, you should be in the resistance for the cause, I think an interesting direction to go. Like, on paper, I think that is actually a good place to take him within this film. But I feel like his cause should not have been the cause of the resistance, but like inserting his own cause of the Stormtrooper rebellion.
Because in some ways it feels a little bit like the resistance doesn't really know where to go. Like, the whole point of the resistance is to resist the First Order. But, like, they didn't really have a purpose beyond that. Like, especially once the New Republic is destroyed, like, their kind of goal is to reestablish the government, but they don't really have any clear set goals and, like, how they want to change the galaxy beyond that. Is beyond just, like, set up a new government and, like, get rid of the First Order. Whereas, like, I feel like Finn coming in with this, like, knowledge of what the First Order is doing and how it affects people would be a really powerful way to, like, be like, this is his purpose now. He is here to give these people a clear direction, a cause to go through, and a pool of people who need help and need immediate help. And it would have been awesome. It just would have been cool.
Yeah, I think it would have been great, like, if the Resistance started it in the sense of them realizing the potential they have with Finn as someone who's currently with them. Like, hey, why don't we use you to kind of try and get to the Stormtroopers? Like, when they realize that, you know, Finn, it's made very clear that Finn was taken as a child. He has no family that he is aware of, and that this is a very normal thing for the Stormtroopers within the First Order, in a way that it was not in the original trilogy. The implication within the original trilogy for those Stormtroopers is that they joined presumably as adults. Rebels kind of has this whole thing. Anyway, we're not going to go into that, but the idea in the sequels is that they were taken as babies. They don't even have names. They have no idea what their birth planets were, let alone their birth families. There's no connection there.
Ironically, the First Order is doing what everybody accuses the Jedi Order of doing. I'm just want to point that out.
Very fun.
We don't have time for that.
We don't have time for that, and it's not relevant to the Finn discussion, but it's important to note.
Point it out. Yeah.
It's very important to note, but I'm not going to follow that.
Don't get her started.
Don't get me
just
started.
Trailing some little bait in the water, a little worm
Yeah,
on the
you're
hook.
just like, your blood in the water, sugar. Like, I think you could easily have the Resistance going like, hey, if Finn, you know, is like this, you know, and has no memory of his family and might be questioning that, you know, and might this could be an easy way in to try and turn the First Order's army against them. And that they could kind of provide this cause to Finn, who is, you know, he is on the fence, you know, within the First Order, that he is not, like, gung-ho about the Resistance by the end of the Force Awakens, which is totally fine. Like, I think that this would be a really easy way to have him be like, look, Rey is doing her own thing, we cannot get you there, we are fucked up right now, like, there's nothing we can do to help you, but, you know, like, we could use your help, and through this, Finn sort of, you know, being asked to reach out to the Stormtroopers and reconnecting to them and having that grow and develop across that film, and, you know, realizing like, hey, maybe this is how I can make a difference. Like, it's not just Rey, it's not even just the Resistance, like, there is an entire group of people that I could mean something to. Kind of gives him that development that he needed, and instead what we got was a casino and some hyena dogs.
No, remember that time that he screamed Rey's name like 6 times?
I don't even mind the screaming of Rey's name, honestly. Like, people make a way bigger deal of that than I feel like they should. But
it's just such it's so funny. That's like all they let him do in that movie is scream for Rey. It's so funny. Like, that's all you could think of.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Rise of Skywalker now, I think. But yeah, he doesn't do it as much in Last Jedi. But he's off trying to apparently have a romance with Rose that fails, because there's, like, no connection there. And
she tased him.
She tases him, but also I'm supposed to believe that, you know, he's, like, unaware of corruption in the galaxy, despite the fact that he came from the First Order. Like, this is his whole thing.
My understanding is that he has maybe a romance with Rose, but there's never a romance with Rey, which I'm a big fan of. I love just gals being pals. I love when you have a male and female lead and they don't get together. I would be curious to see if you guys agree with that, or if you would rather they have, like, gone for the romance there.
If they were going to do no romance at all for Rey, then I would be fine with that. But because they ended up being like, oh, we could do a romance that we've set up with Finn, a black man, Or we could do a weird enemies to lovers thing with the only other white lead here. I guess we'll do the 2 white people. That's my problem. It's more that, like, it feels weird and racist to have your main character have options that are nice, but they're all people of color, and then she goes for the only white man around. I hate that. So if it had been more like, oh, we just don't want Rey and Finn to be together because we think it works better to have a platonic bond between these two, I would be totally fine with that. But because it feels more like they just didn't want her to be with a black man. I hate that.
Yeah. I very recently found out that Rey, but again, I've seen the first movie and none of the other ones. I thought that the Reylos were lying. I thought they were headcanons. And I was like, they've made edits of them kissing. This isn't real. It's, listeners, it's real. They really did that. I don't like it.
I saw that spoiler before I went to see the movie in theaters, and I also thought that people were lying and making edits. I was really, really, really hoping that I was right about that. And then I saw the movie, and they were right. It was just screenshots. I was so furious.
I think I knew it before I went in as well. I had no doubts it was real. None.
Interesting. I went years.
No, I knew it was coming, and I absolutely had zero doubts that is exactly what I was going to see. I kind of like hoped that it was a lie, but anyway, to answer your question, I personally think they should have gone the Finnrey route. I think that there were a lot of people who really picked up, and this is again where I think you land in the nothing was made explicit. So I think you are right in that there is no explicit romance between Finn and Rey. This is not made super overt in The Force Awakens, and it obviously does get dropped. Whereas it is explicit for Finn and Rose, because they do have a kiss at the end of The Last Jedi. She might have an I love you, or... I think she says, like, this is how we're going to win, by saving what we love, not by destroying what we hate. So the implication... It's not an explicit I love you, but, like, it's there. So it's made a lot more explicit with Rose, but then that also got dropped after The Last Jedi, and they are absolutely not together in Rise of Skywalker, but because they also dropped Finnrey, it means that Finn and Rey also don't get together. Like, that doesn't get brought back. However, Finn and Rey within The Force Awakens were heavily implied to be the romantic couple of the series.
There is straight up a line where he's like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Like a cute boyfriend? In like a, are you single kind of way? There is a lot. He says that. And he is straight up flirting.
That is actually... I would actually call that explicit because he does show interest in that moment. So I actually should have put that up in the promised section. Thank you for that, but I obviously forgot. But yes, so there is that line where he does ask her if she is a boyfriend, which means that and they have all those moments where they hold hands. Like there is an entire sequence, I think it says they're running to the Millennium Falcon primarily, where for whatever reason, Finn, has this instinct where he wants to grab her hand when something bad happens so that they can run away together. And she, ends up a little annoyed by this at first, because she's someone who's been very independent, very much on her own, and so she is like, why do you keep grabbing my hand and tugging me places? But then they both fall down, and, at some point she just kind of grabs I think she grabs his hand and pulls him herself or something. And so it's like a 1, 2, 3 thing where films do this a lot, where you'll get 2 instances of one thing, and then the third time it happens is the sort of the punchline. And that happens here, where he grabs her hand twice, and she's like, "What are you doing? Don't grab my hand!" And then she grabs his the third time. And it's this kind of motif almost of the two of them coming back for each other, finding each other, relying on each other. This is a really big thing for Finn and Rey within The Force Awakens, and it's kind of there in The Last Jedi as well, because he's supposed to be looking for Rey. This is why he's trying to desert at the beginning, is to go look for Rey. And they have the big reunion at the end with the hug that Faye likes so much.
I'm not immune to a cute hug.
It's a good hug. I'm not saying you shouldn't like it, but
she lifts a bunch of rocks. They run through the rocks and they hug. It's very sweet. I love it.
It's a really good moment. It is clearly the big climactic, emotional moment of the whole film. So it's kind of there in The Last Jedi. It is not there at all in The Rise of Skywalker. It is completely removed from that film. But there is this motif with him in The Force Awakens. The other thing I'll say about Finnrey is that the person who wrote the novelization for The Force Awakens, I think, has said explicitly online he thought they were going to get together. And so when he was writing the novelization, he added, like, even more stuff. With the assumption that that's where the films were going to go.
Yeah.
And then we all got blindsided by what happened in The Last Jedi. And, I mean, you could argue that perhaps Rian Johnson wasn't intending to actually make Rey and Kylo a full romantic couple. He does go full evil, again, by the end of the film. And, you know, there is this weird moment with Rey and Poe at the end, which I don't even know why he would do this. Like, I know you like Rey and Poe, Faye, but it's just weird because this is the third time that they have put her with another man, and it's like, you couldn't have just brought her back to Finn? No.
Listen, it's cute. I can't help it. The Dame Rey fanfic people are really good. It's not my fault that they're excellent fic writers and they have brought me in to their delusions. They're fantastic fics. What am I supposed to do?
I mean, like, fans can do whatever they want, obviously, but, like, I think it was a weird choice to make in The Last Jedi to kind of, like, remove Finn as an option, put him with this other character, build this whole thing with Rey and Kylo, but then imply that she's going to get together with Poe at the end. Like, it was just a really strange thing to do in that film.
Yeah, it was very much like, look, no homo, guys. He's interested in girls. We promise.
Right. Like, there's just so much strangeness happening with Rey's romantic life, you know, and the way that they really emphasize that Finn and Rey are not going to get together, even though Force Awakens very much was leading us in that direction. So I'm always Team Finnrey. Like, I like Finnpoe, but it was absolutely supposed to be Finnrey, and it didn't happen. And I think that is a major crime, and I think it's one of the reasons that The Last Jedi blew off the rails, is that they decided not to take Finnrey as not only just the co-leads, but as the primary romantic couple in the storyline, and didn't follow that. So, yeah, I think that's how that works. If that answers your question.
It does.
Okay.
Briefly with that, we should say that if they were going to do a dyad, I like the idea of a Force dyad. I think it's fun. If they were going to do a dyad in The Last Jedi, it should have been Finn and Rey.
Like, it absolutely 1000% should have been Finn and Rey.
What were they doing that they didn't just, like, oh, the pair that we have set up to be, like, foils for each other and, like, love each other a lot and, like, are going to be separated for the most of the movie? We should make them a dyad. That makes sense. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, Faye and I have talked about the dyad a lot, and, like, I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about the dyad existing in the sequel trilogy. I'm like, no, this, like, destined Force connection thing feels like it would have made a lot more sense for Luke and Leia, or Obi-Wan and Anakin. But yes, if they were going to introduce something like the dyad into the sequels, it was clearly supposed to be Finn and Rey who should have gotten that instead of Rey and Kylo. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got.
Tell me what a dyad is. And why that works between these two.
So a Force dyad is introduced in the second movie between Kylo and Rey for some fucking reason.
Okay, but I don't want to hear about Kylo.
I'm so sorry. I have to explain him to explain the dyad. So a dyad is essentially that, like, two people are really connected. You've seen Sense8, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, dyad. We did it.
Yeah, but it's only two people, and physical things can pass through the bond.
Okay. Cool.
So that is what a Force dyad is.
I love that.
Yeah.
For listeners who haven't seen Sense8.
Well, then watch Sense8.
I was explaining to Natalie, go watch Sense8, come back and keep listening.
A Force dyad is a connection between two people. It's supposed to be some sort of mental link where the two of them can see each other through the Force bond, but they can't see each other's surroundings. So, you know, if Kylo is on his ship, he will see Rey in front of him, but it will look like she is on the ship with him.
Oh.
Even though she is, like, on a totally separate planet. And the same is true for Rey in reverse. But there does appear to be some sort of level of, like Faye said, things can kind of pass through the bond physically. There's a moment where Rey is standing out in the rain, and Kylo seems to be able to feel it a little bit himself. They can seem to touch each other as well. There is a moment where they reach out and they seem to be able to physically touch each other. There are some other things that come up in The Rise of Skywalker that kind of expand on what they are capable of doing with the Bond as well. One of the bigger moments is that they can pass an object between each other. So Rey, a major spoiler for Rise of Skywalker, folks, but she has a lightsaber in her hand, and she sort of like holds it behind her back so that, we can't see it. And then when she pulls her hand back, it's gone, and then we turn to Kylo, and he now has the lightsaber. So they appear to be able to physically pass objects between each other. They can see each other. Things can kind of, like, pass from one area to the next, like the rain. There is, what is it? Sand?
Darth Vader's mask.
Darth Vader's helmet, which he shouldn't have because it's stupid, but whatever. They shouldn't have the lightsaber either. But there's like some sort of sand or rock or something, I think, that falls too in that sequence, right? Or is it...
In The Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, I thought there... Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
There's the smashed mask.
There's a smashed mask, but I thought there was something else. Oh, like rocks, right? Doesn't she hit something in his room that like seemed to...
yes. She hits something on the wall and like some of the pieces clatter on the ground by him or something.
Right, yeah. So things seem to pass through the Bond even without them attempting to make it happen. It's also not like always there. Like they don't seem to have a ton of control over when they can see each other. They don't always see each other. Like it kind of pops up in specific moments. It's a weird. The diet is weird.
Is it meant to be like we have a like connection because we're these two specific people through the Force? Or is it just like this because I can understand how that would work between Finn and Rey of just like no, we do care about each other so we can connect through the Force this way. Is that meant to be how it's interpreted? So
we're going to hit another problem. It depends on the movie. So this is another problem where it got set up in The Last Jedi and then changed in Rise of Skywalker.
Because in The Last Jedi, they explain it as Snoke has tied their souls together, essentially. That they have potential to become a dyad eventually, and he forced it to happen. He, like, stuck their souls together, and, like, now they're bonded. And then in The Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine's like, no, you guys were, like, prophesied to be this. Snoke was lying, and, like, you were just always going to end this way because the Force dyad was, like, prophesied to show up to bring magic healing powers or something. I don't fucking know. I didn't listen to what Palpatine said. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. It's an interesting concept that is not executed well, which is basically the summary of the entire sequels.
This is true. So, yeah, the dyad as set up in The Last Jedi is like, it seems like it's this emotional connection between them, because you don't know why it's happening until the very, very end, where, like Faye said, Snoke is like, I made this happen, and he does it intentionally to fuck with Kylo. I think he says that he can tell that Kylo's, like, teetering on the brink of light or dark, I guess, and he, for some reason, having the connection to Rey is going to fuck him up a little more.
Sure.
Okay. Whereas when you get to Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams took a slightly different tack and was like, they obviously redeem Kylo not obviously to you, but they redeem Kylo at the end. He turns good again, so there is this element of like they were meant to connect to each other because the two of them together are what allows them to defeat true evil, blah 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 blah. The reason I think it works for Finn and Rey is A, they are set up as co-leads at the beginning of the first film.
Yep.
So they are supposed to be kind of awakening together. This would have helped really emphasize that Finn was Force sensitive, which I think is also something that was pretty heavily emphasized in the first film. This would have helped move the romance forward, which is also made relatively explicit and heavily implied in the first film. It keeps the characters connected, it keeps the plots better connected, while Rey is off separated doing other stuff. So it's similar in a sense to Luke kind of getting those visions towards the end of Empire Strikes Back of Han and Leia, and that's what causes him to leave his training. You could have something similar happening here, where like Finn and Rey can't totally control this dyad, but at some point when they connect, she realizes that they're in some serious fucking trouble, and this is what causes her to leave.
Which makes way more fucking sense for her to leave Jedi training early for that than because, Kylo's such an little baby and he might turn to the light side if I show up and say please, which is stupid.
Right, and that she just gets like pissed off with Luke for being a terrible teacher, and she never needed training to begin with, according to Yoda. We will get to that stuff later. But...
Also, we could have had, if we done the dyad with, we could have had Rey and Finn be training at the same time because, if Finn is Force sensitive, he's with Leia. Leia is supposed to be a Jedi Master, apparently. So which is great. I love that. So why not have Luke and Leia be training Finn and Rey at the same time? It would have been really cool. We could have like seen different dynamics. We could have seen different like kinds of Jedi knowledge getting passed down to different people as they needed it. And it would have been really, really, really cool to have Leia doing, I mean, honestly, fucking anything in that movie besides like not dying magically.
Yeah, besides being in a coma for most of it and passing it off to Laura Dern being an asshole.
Poor Laura Dern does not deserve that role.
She didn't deserve.
She deserved so much better.
I'm learning so much.
Gay icon Laura Dern deserves so much better than she got. But yeah, so I think that there was a lot of things that I think would have been fixed by Finn and Rey getting the dyad, that this would have allowed them to be separated without completely losing the connection that they clearly are supposed to have narratively. So it's not just like, well, they were clearly supposed to be a couple, so they should have had it. I think there are, like, narrative structural reasons that it should have been them.
That makes sense to me.
Thank you. I think so too.
Do we want to talk about Kylo? I feel like we talked about Kylo a lot.
Do we want to discuss Finn becoming a rebel with Poe as, like, a leader?
Yes, I do. Let's skip Kylo. We'll talk about him another time.
Yeah.
We've talked about him a lot. It's Finn's time.
Okay, because we've talked about this a lot. Because Finn and Poe being the new leaders of the rebellion would have been so good. Because Poe is clearly being, like, kind of groomed a little bit to be Leia's successor. But Finn would have been really good as, like, the grounds leader. Like, the guy on the ground with the troops. Poe's right-hand man. Being co-leaders, but like in different ways. Like Poe's over here doing like the politics and the people and the leading and the hard decisions, and Finn is the guy on the ground like inspiring people and finding new recruits and doing the important things. Like that would have been so cool. Like especially as a parallel to the Jedi generals in the Clone Wars, like having Finn be that kind of leader for these people and having that clear parallel to the Jedi of old, especially Mace Windu and Obi-Wan, like all these people would have been just really iconic and a missed opportunity by them.
I also like the idea that like Poe is the one who's like inspiring Finn into the rebellion at the beginning of Force Awakens, right? That like that's how he sort of gets into it. And so I think Poe, again, I love Poe, but I think Poe should have worked more as a support for the other main characters, the real main characters, which should have been Finn and Rey, than anything else. And so I think Poe's role in The Last Jedi should have been to help support Finn's growth into being a rebel of his own, but it's not his story, right? It should still be Finn's story of the Stormtrooper Rebellion, you know, and sort of facing his past and his fears in a way that he doesn't really do quite as much in The Force Awakens because he's just beginning on that journey. Think that Poe really needed to already be done with his development. Laura Dern, I think, maybe shouldn't have been there. I think we shouldn't have had a Holdo. I think that Poe should have been taken over after Leia, that if we had to get rid of Leia, that I think Poe should have just taken over. Like, he's just automatically the next in line, and so then he has the authority then to kind of help move forward this Stormtrooper Rebellion idea with Finn. I think that could have been an interesting dynamic to build up of, like, Poe as the next leader in line after Leia, helping Finn grow. You know, that Poe is more experienced, Finn is not. And I just think that that would have been a much better way to kind of manage that relationship in a way that it was kind of done in The Force Awakens, where Poe doesn't have development, you know, like he's got personality, obviously, but like he's not doing anything that isn't just kind of coming in to support the main characters.
He's there to be hot and competent. And he kills it.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
And to pull Finn into the rebellion.
Yes.
Like, narratively, this is his job. You know, he's there to be the thing that gets Finn out of the First Order. He's there to, you know, give him his name. And, you know, he comes in to save everybody, right? He's the leader of the pilots who come in. Takadana, I think, is the name of the planet. Maz Kanata's, castle thing. He's the one who comes in and saves them all, and that's where Finn and Poe reunite, and then he goes, oh, I want you to meet Leia, and it turns out he's been talking to Leia about Finn, you know, and so, you know, Poe vouching for Finn is what allows Leia to kind of trust what Finn says. So, like Poe's purpose there is to really help bring Finn into the rebellion, and that gets dropped in The Last Jedi as well.
You could have, like, had this really beautiful moment, too, like, maybe in the last film, of Poe feeling a little bit insecure, which they do a little bit of in The Rise of Skywalker, and Finn being the one like, oh, well, you've taught me this, and, like, showing how much Finn has grown is that now he's able to support Poe in, like, a moment of need, if you wanted to do a little character arc for Poe, and, like, having that be part of Finn's growth is that now he's at a place where he is able to support other people and, like, able to be this leader by inspiring other people the same way that he has been inspired. It would have been so easy. It would have been so easy. Why is everybody in Hollywood apparently awful writers? I'm so sick of them for getting paid so much money to make shit.
To make terrible things, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that should have been done within The Last Jedi to fix what could have been. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of fixes in Rise of Skywalker because, like, you know, after Last Jedi happened, it just kind of already sucked. There's no way back. The damage was done.
Yeah, but it's just that way it is. It's the way it is. You can't unblend that smoothie.
So I think we have touched on most of the things that the films sort of implied or promised would happen that didn't happen. So now we wanted to kind of get a little bit more fun and talk about some things that weren't promised or implied at all.
But we think would be cool.
But we thought it would have been fun.
The films did not have the chance to fuck it up.
Yeah, they never did this, but, like, no one should have expected them to. So this includes things like Finnpoe. I know there's a lot of people who I think genuinely thought this might actually happen, but, like...
It's Disney, guys. I'm so
deep
sorry.
down, we all knew it wasn't gonna.
Yeah, we're lucky we got a lesbian kiss one time. Like, it's Disney.
And they pretended they didn't
we're
do
lucky that we got Velcinta as well.
That's true. Love
in Andor.
On the topic of ships, Jedi Storm Pilot was my dream. When the first movie came out and I watched it and I was like, why are we pitting the bad bitches against each other? Why don't we just... Rey has 2 hands. Poe has 2 hands. Finn has 2 hands. I feel like we got a good thing going here. And we could just have a throuple for the first time. And, like, obviously I was shipping a crack fic because that's never going to happen. But what a good ship we could have had.
For the people like Nat who might not know what Jedi Storm Pilot means, this was the ship where Rey, Finn, and Poe were shipped together. There are any number of variations in this. It was either all 3 of them kind of in a relationship together, or it was like Finn with 2 partners.
It's essentially the leverage throuple, but, you know, in space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Pretty much,
I say, with no knowledge of either.
Yeah, so the 2 obvious ships that were, like, never going to happen would have been really fun, obviously. But for a lot of reasons, this was never going to happen. But I think there could have been some really interesting kind of dynamics done with Finnpoe, obviously. Had they chosen to go that route. Obviously, I think The Force Awakens isn't setting this up at all. There's obviously a lot more focus on Finn and Rey as a dynamic. You know, Poe is, like, assumed dead for, like, a good half of the movie before he shows back up on Takodana.
I mean, if they're gonna give us the stupid Reylo couple, they could have at least given me the gays. Like...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how a lot of people felt about Last Jedi, right? Like, if we had to get Reylo, like, did we have to put Finn with Rose, this new character that nobody even knew? You know, like, Poe was right there. You know, we could have at least put those 2 together and given us a conciliation prize.
Is it true that Poe was initially meant to die, but then they liked working with him so much that they were like, we're gonna keep you?
Yes, that is true.
I love that. I knew a thing, everyone.
You did know a thing.
That's why he's so minor in Force Awakens, but is much bigger in...
Yeah, they're like, we might as well do something with you while you're here.
And he was popular, so people liked him, so they made him bigger too.
Yeah.
They should have done that for Finn.
One of the things I really liked, too, that obviously never would have gotten explored, not because it was impossible to have done or anything, but because they just clearly weren't focusing on this in The Force Awakens, was the idea of Finn's birth family. Because they tell us pretty quickly that Finn has no idea who it is. You know, he does, like we mentioned before, he doesn't have a name. He has no idea where he's from or anything like that. And so, you know, that storyline obviously goes to Rey. You know, she is obsessed with her family, who her parents are, whether they're coming back, you know, and all of that. And Finn really doesn't seem super bothered by it. Like, he obviously likes getting a name, but he doesn't talk about trying to figure out where he's from at all. But this was absolutely a thing that could have been done, and I live for the Prince Finn AUs that people have come up with. I think that those are really sweet, and, you know, I would have died for a Prince Finn reveal in the films. Not that it was ever going to happen, but I think that could have been a really interesting storyline for Finn if they'd wanted to go that way. This stormtrooper taken from his family at such a young age that he doesn't even know what his name is, whatever it might have been, you know, and then kind of having to reunite with that family and figure out where he was from and what that means for him.
Do you think there is a Rapunzel Finnpoe fanfiction? Because if there's not, there should be.
Like Tangled Rapunzel specifically?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably.
That would be so
sure
cute. I need this, actually. I'm going to find this after we're done recording.
We're going to get people sending us fic recs.
Please send us fic recs. Actually, if you have any fic recs, send them all to us. All of them.
Okay, no. You don't want all of them. You don't want Raylo fics.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the only Raylo fic
no,
acceptable, that is the one where she dumps him in a trash can, the number one fic on AO3. That's the only one you can send to me.
Yeah, there's a reason I don't tend to read a lot of sequels fic. I'm just not, like, super trusting of them. But I think I've got a couple that are in my bookmarks, my 3,000 plus bookmarks on it. Y'all, I bookmark everything. I have made the mistake before where I'm like, I'm gonna remember this. Or the opposite, where I'm like, it's fine, I don't really care about it a lot. And then 3 months later, I'm like, you know that fic that I read that one time with that premise? And then I cannot fucking find it for a year. I never bookmarked it because I thought it was me. So I bookmark fucking everything.
I love that for you. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I never close my tabs ever.
Oh, I close my tabs all the time, but that's what the bookmarks are for. I just go back in and I've got like 6 pages of them.
You know, you both are just like different flavors of unhinged, and I love you for that.
Thank you.
So, what happened after do you guys have any other ones that you would want to put out before I go into the AU that I managed to write after I watched the fucking sequels?
Shocking that you have done this.
You were in on it, don't even. You helped me write it.
And she said that at the time, too. I'm in that group chat. I see you.
You see us.
I'm ready to hear it.
I got inspired. And so one of the things that I thought about was, you know, that Finn obviously is supposed to be force sensitive and all of that. And I think we were talking about Leia as Finn's Jedi Master. I think this was kind of what inspired, was like Rey with Luke and Leia with Finn. And I kind of considered the opposite, where Finn ends up going to Octo? I never remember. I just watched these movies 2 weeks ago.
Octu.
Octu? I thought it was Toe.
Pretty sure it's 2.
Anyway.
It's actually 3.
I know.
So.
Finn goes off to find Luke, and Rey is the one who is like so injured that she has to stay behind. And so then you get Finn and Luke as these people who are sort of almost more jaded or embittered about their life, and they're so scared that they're always running. So you've got Luke, you know, back on Octo, just like desperately terrified of the First Order. You've got Finn kind of desperately terrified of the First Order, but this was Rey's mission, you know, the last thing that she wanted to do, but she's too injured to do it, so he takes it up in her place. Whereas Rey is the one who is really invested in the concept of the Resistance and what it means to the galaxy. She's like heard all the stories. She's the one who's super excited about, she's excited about Han, but to be fair, she's excited about him as a smuggler. Whereas Finn is actually the one who knows him as the rebel general. But she just seems much more invested. You know, that like this is what gets her to trust Finn, is when he lies about having been in the Resistance. And being undercover or something. And, you know, I think that works a lot better with Leia than it does with Luke. And you've got also this dynamic with Rey and Leia where they're both clinging to their past. You know, they're both clinging to this idea that a member of their family is coming back when it's never going to happen. Leia has to let go of the idea that Kylo's going to come back to her, and Rey has to let go of the idea that her parents are going to come back to her. And so it's like you've got a child with no parents who've abandoned her and a mother whose, son has, basically died in an emotional sense, kind of being put together. And I think that those, you've got these two dynamics between the four characters where they really have so many interesting parallels that I think would allow them to connect and grow through each other. Where they're all facing their actual fears and become better as a result. And I came up with a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm not going to put them all on this podcast. I'm very, very sorry, but also you're welcome. Faye and Nat get to live with like hours of me typing in a Discord chat about these things. But
and we love
that
it.
was my, yeah.
You all wish you were us.
Yeah. Y'all are missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that was my like big, like, would never have happened in the films because obviously this isn't where The Force Awakens ends, but I thought that would have been a really interesting dynamic to explore as a alternative to what the films promised us.
I already have emotions about those pairings. And I haven't watched the films, and I don't have an attachment to these characters, but I'm like, you know what? That does make sense. I want to see what happens.
Finn and Luke would be such a cool pairing. Like, I am obsessed with, like, Finn's kind of natural cynicism butting up against Luke's kind of forced cynicism that he has, like, made himself believe. And Luke being like, wait, no, why am I having optimistic thoughts every time you say something cynical? I hate that. But he's kind of like, I don't know, Luke's just, like, a very naturally optimistic person, and, like, having him paired with Finn would be really fun to, like, kind of bring that out in him when he, like, really doesn't want to have that brought out in himself. It just would be so cool. It'd be so fun.
It would be really fun. And this obviously was also, we'll talk about this later, whenever we end up getting to the episode about the New Republic and the Jedi Order and how that got handled in the sequels, because I don't think we've even assigned that a date yet, but this was an AU where I decided the Jedi survived. The few, like six or seven Jedi who don't become Knights of Ren.
Do you mean every AU we ever write?
Yeah, because I have feelings about the fact that they like eliminated the entire Jedi Order again.
We have a goal in that every time we write an AU, which we do often, like literally every month, like all the time.
All the time.
Every time it happens, we bring the Jedi Order back. They don't die. They don't get massacred again, because why the fuck would you do that to the poor Jedi? They haven't done anything to deserve this. Like, but 30 years later, they all die again? What is wrong with you people?
All die again. Yeah, and like, I think we'll talk about this when we get to Luke a little bit more as well, but I think it works much better as a motivation for why Luke is hiding himself away if there are people he's protecting, as opposed to the very embittered, jaded, defeatist, like insensitive and unfeeling version of Luke that we got.
Like, if that was an act that he was putting on to protect the Jedi that he's hiding from everybody, that would make sense.
That would be one thing.
That would be fun.
Right? It'd be so fun to have him, like, kind of, like, finally drop it and be, like, a little bit like Yoda when he's, like, faking being silly. It's the opposite. He's actually, like, really chill, and he's faking being a jerk.
Yeah. But that was where the fear came from, right? That it's not, like, just fear about him going back. It's the fear of, like, well, what if I lose these few survivors that I've managed to save? You know, that he's holding them back because, like, he cannot conceive of losing them again. You know, that he's managed to save these few. He lost a lot of them to the Knights of Ren, but he's got a couple that he's managed to protect on Octo, and he's just like, if I send them out there, they might die. And he's just, like, not certain how to handle that, you know, and I think that would have been a really interesting way to kind of have him go up against Finn, who, you know, also kind of has similar feelings about, like, I can't face the Order. What am I supposed to do about that? You know, they're so much more powerful than I am. I am just one person, and you have to kind of have the two of them learning to set those fears aside together so that the Jedi can come back and be what they're meant to be in the galaxy and kind of, you know, work together with the Resistance.
Instead of having poor Rey building the Jedi from the ground up again.
Mm-hmm. So, Rey Jedi Order movie, I can't remember the director's name, I'm so sorry. Do not kill the fucking Jedi by the end of your movie. I swear to God. Swear to God.
We will make an episode entirely about why that was a mistake.
We'll spend the whole episode, like, doxing you or something. I don't know. Like, we'll come up with something.
Can you dox a famous person?
Probably. I don't know.
Yes. This isn't, listen, this Disney, this is not a threat.
Yes, it is! Don't listen to her. It's a threat.
Oh, I'm afraid of the mouse.
Yeah, it would be, I think, a massive mistake on so many levels to kill them off third time.
Mm-hmm.
In the Rey Jedi Order movie, so I am hoping that is not where they go. I think that this would be a radical mistake to make. I think we should end on some hope. Would be nice.
And fingers crossed, maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, Finn, also one of our members, is off doing stuff somewhere else. That's why he's not in this movie. Because Finn was established as a Force sensitive in the movies canonically. They don't say it, but like it's very much established that he like feels Rey dying. He is Force sensitive. And if they don't capitalize on that, I will be sad. And have they considered that making me sad is illegal?
I want to go back to Finn and the stormtroopers for a second, because one of the things I picked up in Rise of Skywalker that I thought was very weird is that one of the ways they do what you're saying by trying to emphasize Finn's Force sensitivity without saying it out loud is that he keeps talking about having a feeling. They just kind of call it a feeling. He says this a couple of times. And then they also have Jannah, who, for the Nats, Jannah is another stormtrooper deserter that they meet in the Rise of Skywalker. She's kind of got a whole company of deserted stormtroopers that have managed to escape and are just kind of living on this random planet that they go to. I can't remember what it is anymore. It's in the Endor system, but I don't remember where it is because it's got the remains of the Death Star 2.0 on it. Which is redunk, given that it's also the size of a planet, but we're going to let that go. But so there is this whole group of stormtroopers, and when Finn is speaking to her, they connect over realizing that they all left because they had a feeling. And given that this is something that they used to heavily emphasize that Finn is Force sensitive, I am left to wonder, A, are all of the stormtroopers in the First Order Force sensitive? Or, like, just this company? Like, are there a lot of Force-sensitive stormtroopers? Because that could have been a really cool thing to explore. Like, how many of those stormtroopers in the First Order are Force-sensitive?
Do you want my theory? Do you want to know how I would do this?
Obviously, yes.
Okay, so they kidnap, like, a lot of kids, right? And in The Mandalorian, they keep kidnapping Grogu because he's Force-sensitive so they can make Snoke, presumably, I guess. I think that was, like, the implication, that they need his blood to make a Force-sensitive clone, right? So they kidnap a bunch of Force-sensitive kids so they can steal their blood and make more Palpatine people, whatever, ship all their blood off to Exegol. So the reason that there's so many Force-sensitive stormtroopers is because they keep kidnapping Force-sensitive kids to steal their blood.
That's intriguing. I wish I mean, like, I'm kind of over all the storylines we're getting and stuff right now about, like, you know, the cloning.
You wish they'd put, like, at least that much thought into it? Is that what you're trying to say?
I wish they'd put at least that much thought into it. Like, I'm kind of over all the cloning things we're getting. It's in The Mandalorian. It's in The Bad Batch.
Fucking stupid.
It's kind of everywhere because they're focusing on it pretty heavily. But, like, having that much thought put into it would have been really nice. To at least kind of help explain why this is in there at all. But, yeah, I just thought that could have been interesting, that, like, there are a number of Force-sensitive stormtroopers as well. And so even if you only have, like, 5 Jedi left, like, there are maybe several thousand Force-sensitive stormtroopers that you could, you know, kind of
train
up, do something with. They're their own group that Finn saves, and I think that could have been a really interesting storyline to kind of go with if they'd wanted to, but obviously there was absolutely no time to do any of that. And I don't think it was, like, anything intentional by Abrams, because it was something that ended up in Abrams' film. I don't think this was something that he was intending to do within The Force Awakens at all. There's no indication within The Force Awakens that this was a thing beyond Finn. But just given that it ended up in The Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, oh, good, putting it back, though. Like, that could have been a cool story. Is like, it's not just Finn. You know, that Finn might be the first to desert, but that he's by no means the only Force-sensitive stormtrooper.
In conclusion, we love Finn, like, a lot. And they don't love him enough. They should love him more.
Finn deserved better.
And
we gave it to him.
And we're like never gonna see any more of him again, because John Boyega is very rightfully never going to return.
Put that man in a Regency rom-com immediately, though. I need him in a billowy white shirt. It's a It's the Haslow's my hierarchy of needs. It's the bottom one. Would you guys like a goat fact?
Yes,
Always.
please.
Goat fact. Goat fact, not a fact. A fact. Each goat kid has a unique call, and along with its scent, that is how a mother recognizes it from birth, not by sight. Isn't that
That's so cute.
It's adorable.
The little goats have different way of speaking, and the mom's like, "Oh, that lisp, that's my baby."
Like, what was it? Bambi's new baby that we got sent by one of our listeners very kindly.
Yes.
Oh, that was
a
so
couple days
cute.
ago.
the
Thank
way
you
the
to
way that I cried at
Betty
that
Jarris.
picture of a baby goat.
I have it saved to my phone. It's so cute.
It's adorable. Sunny Jarris, if you want to send us more pictures of your baby goat, none of us are going to complain.
We will be so happy.
I'd also love to know whatever you name your new baby goat.
Please.
Oh, I would love to know what they named them.
No, Feline. Feline was the name of the mother.
Of the mom. Yes.
The mom.
Close.
And unfortunately, I don't know if Bambi and Feline's children have canonical names. Otherwise, I would suggest them.
I mean, you could just name it Finn. Thoughts?
That's a great idea.
You know, I think that's a great name.
Name it Finn Dameron for the ship we will never get.
I love that.
Our intro and outro music is Mos Eisley Cantina by Speedkicks. Angela and I edit, our artwork is by me, and Sugar is our writer and researcher. You can find us on Instagram and Tumblr at Unleash the Goats. Thanks for listening.